Why did Trump win, and what should Democrats have done differently, and what should Democrats do differently in the future? Now, many media pundits, in my view, are not seeing the simple, truthful picture. They're overanalyzing the situation. One simple reason why the Democrats lost is the overwhelming audience reach of Fox News and the other right-wingnut media, which is corrupting our politics and bringing out the worst in everyone. The right-wingnut media calls what is right wrong and pretends that hatefulness is virtue. Battling wokeness trumps loving your neighbor. Another reality is, while the mainstream pundits proclaim Kamala Harris as the winner of her presidential debate with Trump, Trump also won the debate in the minds of the majority who voted for him. So let's compare Trump's winning message of the 2024 debate with his winning message after descending the escalator in Trump Tower in 2015. Trump, 2015. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. And they're bringing those problems with them. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Trump 2024. In Springfield, the Haitians are eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And that is what is happening in our country, and it's a shame. What's the difference? Trump's only path to victory in 2024 was to continue stirring up the hate and prejudice that won him the election in 2016. Simply put, more Americans approved of Trump's divisive message than disapproved. Trump's questions to black journalists, when did Kamala Harris turn black, may have been more calculating than it seemed. Since Kamala Harris could pass for white, Trump wanted to hammer home the message to his base that Harris was as black as a burnt black kettle. In this past election, we learned that many older white voters who will vote for an old boring white guy will never vote for a younger black woman, whether she could pass for white or not. Joe Biden won in 2020 because he was an old boring white guy with significant support from black voters. Unfortunately, in 2024, black and liberal voters did not turn out in sufficient numbers to tip the balance. My gut feeling is that a Tim Walz-Kamala Harris ticket would have won, but that was a political impossibility given the short time frame needed to swap the candidates. After Biden's disastrous debate performance, he was not seen as a winner. Again, do not forget that half the country lives in the news bubble dominated by right-wingnut media, including Fox News, Newsmax, Breitbart, Steve Bannon's podcast, and Alex Jones that lie with abandon. What should Democrats do differently? Many pundits agree that the Harris-Walz campaign was run as perfectly as possible. In my humble opinion, the only changes Democrats should consider is to double down on compassion and to oppose the cruelty that the Republicans will show during the Trump presidency with vim and vigor. Both Presidents Lincoln and Grant wanted to establish foreign colonies where the freed slaves could flee to escape the hateful racism our black citizens faced in their homeland. Black leaders like Marcus Garvey re-energized the Back to Africa movement, and W.E.B. Du Bois himself chose voluntary exile in Ghana during his waning years. But most freed blacks did not want to flee their homes after Reconstruction, and often those who did flee to Africa returned to escape the instability and violence of the fledgling African nations. Most certainly, blacks in America today will rarely consider fleeing America when so many civil rights victories have been won. This means that morally, Democrats have no choice but to continue the struggle for civil rights and due process for all citizens, and to encourage their fellow Americans to be compassionate towards and love all our neighbors, regardless of the color of their skin or the country of origin or the religion of their ancestors. Loving your neighbor as yourself is a core of all Judeo-Christian mainstream traditions, as well as the Democratic Party ideology. Politics is merely an expression of how we love our neighbors, even those we barely know, even those unknown neighbors we fear, or cause us discomfort. Shout on the rooftops, Democrats are all good Christians and Jews because Democrats show compassion for and love all their neighbors. When will the struggle for civil rights end? When will America become a truly colorblind nation? We must take a long view of history to answer this question. Many millennia ago, the Old Testament prophets warned the Jews that their God demanded that we be compassionate towards the widows, the orphans, the poor, and the sojourners, or immigrants. At the very dawn of history, God reminded Cain that unfortunately, yes, he was indeed his brother's keeper. The struggle for civil rights is a forever struggle that will last as long as people do not love their neighbors as themselves. And Democrats must brand themselves as the party of compassion, the party who condemns cruelty. We should all fear that Trump will indeed bring out the worst in all of us, that in a decade or two we will descend back into the old Jim Crow days when uppity blacks were swinging from trees without justice, without due process. We should push back vigorously against teaching our children that we would be turning back towards God when we return to these good old days. Democrats must champion an education where our children are taught the uncomfortable truths about our past, and that the 1619 Project is nothing more than narratives on what life was like for blacks surviving in the dark Jim Crow past. Democrats must gain hope by remembering when compassion eventually conquered cruelty even during the darkest days of past history. We must remember how, in the dark days after the end of Reconstruction, Booker T. Washington was able to establish the Tuskegee Institute, a black college and trade school, with a grant from the Alabama legislature, and initially with a substantial assistance from local white businessmen in rural Alabama. We must remember how, although Theodore Roosevelt's Attorney General was unable to combat the cruel system of peonage, where blacks were jailed for vagrancy and other trumped-up charges so they could be leased out in chain gangs to local businesses, railroads, mines, and plantations in conditions often as bad as the Nazi work camps. We must remember how public hearings of the Georgia legislature slowly turned public opinion against this practice, enabling the administration of his cousin, Franklin Roosevelt, to finally end peonage on the eve of World War II. And we must remember how the initially conservative court of Earl Warren paved the way for the civil rights legislation of the 60s, and the Brown decision desegregating public schools, and other opinions ending segregation and discrimination in public life. And we must remember how a Deep South former senator majority leader from Texas, Lyndon Baines Johnson, pushed through groundbreaking civil rights legislation, even though he knew this would lose his beloved South to the Republican Party for decades to come. And the Democratic Party must be seen as a party of compassion. The Democratic Party must be seen as a party opposing cruelty. And we must also pray that one day the Republican Party will likewise reject cruelty and embrace compassion, recalling George Bush's doctrine of conservatism with compassion. Maybe when that happens, American politics will unite us rather than divide us. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.